I'll try to talk loud so everybody can hear me. And I'm very honored to come here to speak to you to bring awareness to Alzheimer's and dementia. My name is Joyce Catherine Wu. By daytime, I wear the suit of a residential real estate agent with Berkshire Hathaway. But all the other times, I put on a purple cape, and I'm a volunteer with the Alzheimer's Association here in Orange County. I've been involved with the organization for about a year now, and I joined being a volunteer because both my mom and dad had Alzheimer's. Over this past year of volunteering, I've learned so much about Alzheimer's, and one of the things I find amazing the most is truly how many people have been affected by either Alzheimer's or dementia. I would say when I share my story, I'm about 85% of people actually have also a connection. My journey began with my mom. She would say something, a few minutes later, she would say it again. And a few minutes later, she would say it again. So we knew obviously something was going on with mom. But then it got more frequent. She couldn't tell me what she had done that weekend or even had for breakfast or the night before. And then I started finding bruises on her all the time, and she started falling. My dad, my mom was his everything. So he didn't want to ever leave her side. He started being her caregiver, and like I said, he wouldn't leave her. And it got to the point where I was kind of being concerned for my dad because, again, he was so focused on my mom, that I'm like, Dad, if you need a break, I said, let me come in and spend time with mom. You go take care of yourself. You go do things for yourself. But he wouldn't leave my mom. Then I was getting concerned for his health because, again, mentally, he had the patience of a saint, because if you're living with someone as the caregiver with someone with Alzheimer's, it repeat. That patience is something learned and earned. So I would tell my dad, I'm like, are you taking care of yourself? He'd blow me off. And then I realized how to approach it with him. I said, Dad, what happens if something to you happens? Who is going to take care of mom? That actually seemed to resonate with him. And he says, okay, I'll do something. Then COVID hit. And I started noticing how, because they were in lockdown, they lived in a 55 plus active senior community called Laguna Woods here in Orange County. It went in full lockdown. No social activities, the gyms were closed, the educational seminars were canceled. They weren't even supposed to go for walks outside. They were in lockdown in their condo. And I started noticing without that stimulation, my dad was taking longer to process what I was asking him after a question. Sometimes it started to get to a point where it'd take him 10 minutes and all of a sudden he pipes up an answer of a conversation I had asked him, like I said, 10 minutes ago. Then I started seeing piles of paper collecting, like the bills, financial bank statements, the insurance information, and then it took over the kitchen table. They had two little areas carved out where they could eat. We used to go to Dana Point Harbor, which is 10 minutes maybe from here. That was about the halfway point between where they lived and I lived. And I said, okay, Dad, let's, you and Mom, we'll meet at Dana Point Harbor. They love that place. They've been there many, many times. My dad flared up on the phone with me saying, what are you talking about? Why are you asking me to drive so far? I'm like, well, what are you talking about? I've never had to drive that far before. I'm like, Dad, it's Dana Point Harbor. You've been there many times. He got so frustrated saying it was south of where I lived, and I was just like, okay, Dad, I'll come pick you and Mom up. We'll go to lunch, where you live. That was the big bells of alarms for me, because a place my dad had been to many, many times, driven there many times, he forgot where it was at. So I scheduled the doctor's appointments, we put him through the screening, the neurologist, and sure enough, my dad had stopped taking care of himself because he was so focused on my mom. He hadn't seen his cardiologist in over 4 years, needed a pacemaker, and his brain wasn't getting the proper oxygen, and he had vascular dementia. The brain damage was done and irreversible. So from that point on, I had to take the car keys away. I had to become the caregiver for 2 parents, driving them to all of their doctor's appointments. And when you're in your 80s, there's a lot of those. I had to manage their finances, start paying their bills, watch their banking account. I had to manage their medications. I had to go pick up their medications, drive them for the food shopping, anything they needed, I had to take care of. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'm a residential real estate agent for a reason, because I'm sure you all know the crazy madness that industry was during COVID. Now try working in that and now having to work, like take care of two parents working as their caregiver on top of that. I was stressed, I was tired. I now was the caregiver not taking care of myself. My cholesterol jumped up to 265. I was comfort eating and 1 to 2 glasses of wine trying to relieve my stress. Sorry. Yep. And I'm still traumatized today because every time my phone rang with that special ringtone for my parents, I tensed up, my stomach went in a knot, my chest started pounding. Every time I was worried one of them had fallen, they're back in the ER, or were they calling me to tell one had fallen, they're gone. I'm still traumatized about that. So I eventually realized after my dad's fall that I could no longer provide, the care they've needed. And I had to hire live-in caregivers. They needed 24/7 care. That is expensive. Live-in caregivers can run anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 a month. Later on, my dad went into memory care for a few months, and that also can run up to $25,000 a month. Insurance does not cover it. It does not cover caregivers. It does not cover if you have even caregivers coming during the day. It does not cover anything for assisted living or memory care. I had to face the reality every month depleting their financial assets to pay for their caregiving. And I had to consider, will they outlive their finances? Then what? Seriously, how am I going to take care of my parents if they run out of money for their care? My mom lost her battle November 21st, 2021. My dad, 6.5 months later, May 28th, 2022. There is no cure. Over 6 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's. And that means that over 11 million Americans are the caregivers, their family and friends. It is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States. And actually for us in California, it is our 3rd leading cause. But yet we don't have a cure. We don't have treatments for all stages. We only have treatments so far that are recently approved for the early onset or mild cognitive impairment. 1 in 3 seniors dies with Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's and dementia are costing our country $345 billion. And it's projected it's going to cost our country $1 trillion by the year 2050. By the age of 45, the risk of Alzheimer's is 1 out of every 5 women, 1 out of every 10 for men. We need to focus on finding cures. Right now, there's an exciting clinical study that has started that is actually testing for a vaccine. I know locally they're going to have about 12 patients they're testing here at Hope Hospital. I've also, over this year, have learned a lot of things. 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day can actually help reduce your risk. Taking prescribed sleeping aids like Ambien can increase your risk of Alzheimer's. I continue to volunteer with the Alzheimer's Association to find a cure. And I'm not going to stop till each and every one of you have 1 more day, 1 more week, 1 more month, 1 more year with your loved ones. So thank you for your support and your consideration to find a cure. Thank you.